So, welcome, Joanna. Joanna Macy. I'm really, truly delighted to be able to talk with you today.
I'm delighted to be here at this moment with you, David Loy. You've been such a beacon for me of good thinking in this welcoming path of the Buddha Dharma.
Thank you for those kind words. I think you're well aware of what I think of you as the most important figure, the founding figure, I think, in what's now called Eco-Dharma, and in many ways, socially engaged Buddhism generally. Um, so I'm delighted to have this opportunity for a public conversation. I also want to welcome everyone who's going to be joining us here. Um, not that we can see them, but I'm sure many people will be interested in what we have to talk about. Um, the original impetus for this conversation is the publication of your new book, or actually the third edition of your really important book,
World is lover,
Lover
world
World
is
as
self.
Self. This is a third edition. I'm familiar with I think it must have been the second one. Uh, and this third one is very different. And I'm wondering if you could tell us about why that's the case and what's the reason for this third edition.
Well, for me and for a lot of the people I know, uh, World is lover, world is self is their favorite book of mine. And it has been true for me. And um, that so the first edition was in 1991, and then about 14 years later, 16 years later, whatever, in 2007, the Parallax Press brought out another edition with another editor, and it was slimmed down,
Mhm.
and there was um, quite a bit that was uh, taken out and rearranged. And so there was quite a bit of conversation about that. I was very, very busy at the time and hardly noticed, I'm ashamed to say.
Mhm.
But I would hear people talking about it. And so that when I came to working with my wonderful friend and editor, Stephanie Kaza, who used to be a student of mine before her 25 years running the graduate program in environmental studies at the University of Vermont, and using a lot of what she approaches and angles and processes and thoughts of mine that we'd shared together back in the 90s. When she retired from that, one of the ideas in her mind, first she went a couple of books of her own, now that she has some time, that Green Buddhism, another book on trees, and said she wanted to write an article about me for a Festschrift, or a celebratory book
Mhm.
honoring me at the end of my life about what. And she found there wasn't such a book, and so she said, "Well, I guess I'll create it," and that came the book, "A Wild Love for the World." And um, then said, "Well, we need what we really need is another issue, and more in your words, now at this incredible, challenging time, the condition of our society, global society, the human community, and the nature of the condition of our planet, of the natural world. Let us bring forth world as lover, world as self for this time.
Mm.
And it didn't mean all that much changing, because the recognition that that we were destroying our world was very basic to my life I describe in the book what, as this happens for people sometimes, a sudden recognition that our hopes for the future were sweet and dear, perhaps, but what actually was happening was that we were heading over a cliff, that we had have a global corporate economy that was devoted to turning the body of the earth into money, and instigating, incredibly spreading annihilation of the living body of the earth. So we're now facing that. What had been 55 or so years ago in my life a decisive turning point when I thought we seemed to be heading to destroying our world. It could happen, which changed everything. And absolutely, how do you live with that kind of awareness? And that opened that challenge of how can you be with the destruction of our beloved planet, our mother, our living planet, with science showing this is a living system to which we are incredibly well suited, adapted, that we have already through science and philosophy and green thinking and all of it, such incredible psychic, spiritual, emotional tools, scientific tools, that we are landing ourselves in such a terrifying and tight place. And that's coming true so much more evidently right now than when the reality of it hit me back in 1976, and has been with me ever since. And I've known that being open to it and honoring it and seeing that your pain for the world is just the other side of your love for the world. And that we can find in ourselves the moral strength to wash our eyes and see, just as when you love someone so dearly, be it your sweetheart or your mother or your child, you want to see their condition. You're not afraid to see their illness. And that journey has been one that's been very beautiful and full of transformations, and seeing the growth of inventiveness, ingenuity, and compassion, and staying power and honesty. It's been, oh, David, it's been glorious. and I'm, I may be 92 now, but I feel as if I could live maybe not another 50 years, but certainly a bunch. And
Please do, Joanna. Please do. Dogen, not Dogen, Joshu or Jiaozhou, the Zen master, he didn't begin teaching until he was 80 years old, and he lived to 120. So please take your time.
Well, I know. Well, okay. But I want to say what the words mean. Why do I say world is love or world is self?
Please.
And then I want to just show the book, because it's so beautiful.
Please.
Back in 1990, I gave a talk one night in Berkeley, and I was talking about, I forget why I got into this, but that there were 4 ways of viewing the world, how you relate to the challenges, ecological or economic or political, how you respond to that is very much to do with what is your worldview. How do you image your relationship to this world? And I picked 4 that I saw running through history and cultures, and in every religion has these 4. One is world is battlefield. One is world as trap. One is world as lover, and the other is world as self. And the world as battlefield has such ancient roots, as you know, back to the Zoroastrians and the Manichaeans, and there the world is just a backdrop to
To
your
the struggle
moral.
between good and evil, yeah.
Yes, it's good versus evil, and that's what matters.
Mm.
And what matters is that you're on God's side, and you will eventually win. You're so convinced of that, so you know you're going to win. But it takes a lot of courage and vigilance and readiness to bonk whoever gets in the way. And we have a lot of that in this country, and even in my heritage. And the and it's useful because it sort of summons up the blood, gives you courage, you know. Well, boy, I've seen that grow in this country. And then the second one is also so evident to me, which is the world is trap. The world is a place where of brokenness, a place of profanity, of missing the point, of savage unrest, and that actually it's so far from the good, which is actually tended to see as being up. So we're down here in this, and then up there is peace and beauty and rationality and tranquility and orderliness. And so it's very tempting to want to extricate yourself from this messy world and ascend. And that actually, that temptation to use spiritual beliefs and practices as showing you an exit door.
Yeah.
And I know you deal with this. It's one of the things I really love so much about your writings and speakings, and I see it in your book, Awareness Bound and Unbound. It's made us strangers in our own world, and it's made us resentful to be here, and it's made us, and we associate the tranquility we feel in meditative practices with something up there apart from our world that we can go and finally be, so, oh, gee, this is wonderful. All I need is another gin and tonic, but this is just, you know.
I see this as very much connected with sort of soul, soul or spirit separated from the material world, the physical world. Later it becomes mind and body, somehow understanding this world, and then even things like emotions and sexuality is kind of holding us, and desires holding us here, trapping us here, as you say, and this desire to transcend and escape all this. That seems so common, and of course we find it in Buddhism too. It's
Oh, you
as you
bet.
say, it's in all the major religions.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah. So that, and in the talk I gave, I described that, and then I said, but then there are these other views too, and I tend to find myself kind of moving back and forth between these two, of world as lover and world as self. And I find as examples of world as lover a lot in Bhakti Buddhism, not Hinduism, and the bhajans in devotion to Krishna, and it's and is using the natural world, the blue shaded, blue gray monsoon clouds that bring the fertility. You're singing for them. You love the peacock's cry because it's bringing the rains, and that's how you see Krishna, the color of his
That's
skin.
right. I hadn't thought of that before, the connection of the colors.
Yeah, and you sing about the nectar of his lips, that the etc. That the it uses the erotic instead of seeing eros as stirring you up in a most tempting and dangerous way. You celebrate it and use the erotic as a vehicle for your spiritual practice and enjoyment. Why not? It's a luscious world. We are capable of pleasures, and that brings joy to our lives. That flips so easily, since it's a love relationship. As in any love relationship, there are times when you just move into a unity beyond hardly any sense of beyond any ways of describing it, of sinking into a vaster sense of who you are, and this huge, great reality of being and of limitless belonging that is kind of nice. And that all of these, so anyway, and then what I love about, so I wanted to bring this back. So having explained why the title, I want to show the book itself. And this was a brilliant new cover, because basic to my teachings in the world is that we are recognizing that because of our addiction to growth economy, because of our having anchored our hopes and policies to a growth economy, and this growth economy is an industrial growth economy. We're in the soup because it's madly taking us to the cliff and over, because it is causing the natural systems of our planet to unravel. So I've picked a phrase, a name from one of my favorite economists, David Korten, and called this the great unraveling is the time that, and that's what systems do. They don't just fall over dead. They slowly lose their memory, their coherence, and come apart. And so this shows that, yes, it's still world is our lover and our self, but it's disintegrating. Then what I love about this cover is that, as you can see perhaps, there's water flowing, and the water is flowing over it in circles. And it's alive. Something is happening. We are life. It will not stop. Life is inherent in this planet still.
So it seems to me that you're making that point sometimes by distinguishing between the great unraveling and the great turning.
Yes.
Could you say a bit about that difference in your mind?
The great turning is happening now. We thought we might, it's this transition. It's the great adventure of our time. It is the transition from the Industrial Growth Society, which has been trying to and unfortunately succeeding a lot of turning the planet's living body into money and also human bodies into money. So that's one story that we've been doing. But there's another story is that that's coming apart. And so this great unraveling, and that's presented here in just this pebbles. Things have come apart. What had been coherent systems is in pieces now, more and more. And then the third story that we see that's also underway is, and maybe that's presented by the flows of water, is that something's changing. There is freshness coming. There's new ways of seeing. There's new ways of responding. There's new understandings of who we are and our relationship to ourselves and each other. This is fantastic. We would be aghast at how fast this is coming if we had an honest, non-corporate controlled media. But our media are just presenting things in terms of such an old pair of glasses of the Industrial Growth Society. And
They are themselves corporations, so that's the way they see the world.
that's it. They're corporate control. Yeah. So, but the great turning is happening now, but it's hard to see without knowing where to look. But once you do, then you're finding that there's a lot of you, and you begin to link arms, and you're seeing that there's brilliance in what ways we can handle our looking at our wealth as money, but seeing what our true wealth is, and seeing what we've been enslaved to ideas of what we need that are nuts, and that so that there's a whole coming to our sanity in our relation to our needs and in relation to life and into our planet.
Now, in addition to all the books that you've written, you've also created the work that reconnects. It's had a couple different names over the years, and
Yeah.
that has been really, really important in terms of the kinds of practices that you've developed in order to, not just write about something, but actually practices in addition to meditation that can help people see things in a new way. So I'm curious, reading the new edition, it seems to me that the work that reconnects is also very much embodied in this. And I wonder if you'd like to say a little bit about how the world that reconnects this work the work that reconnects, how it's been developing and
Yeah.
evolving in.
Well, it precedes everything. When I, back in 1976, had received this clarity, and more people are seeing that we are on the skids, that given the way we see our world and our habits, we're going over a cliff. And now it's quite public, and through bodies and movements like the deep adaptation movement of Jim Bendel, and with the new book out on who are seeing, you just have to, we are in our world that we've been so proud of is collapsing. And actually, this has to happen because it is extremely unjust, and it's poison to living systems. It's wrecking our world. We couldn't take it down fast enough. It's got to, so like any really healthy change, there is a positive disintegration, come apart at every stage of evolution. when one life form reorganizes to the next stage, it doesn't add something on. It has to reorganize. And that means you have to come apart. And that's uncomfortable. So growth is painful because you have to give up what you were good at, even if what you were good at was squeezing things with your lobster pinchers. I want to do this. I want to keep squeezing and crunch, crunch. And then, but life has been moving beyond external armor and growing soft, sensitive things like fingers and sensitive apparatus like eyeballs and ears and lips and nose and to be, in order to connect, we have to become more vulnerable. And the at any rate, I'm just running off at the mouth now, but I just,
Well, you have an eager audience, Joanna. Uh, Happy to hear what you say.
but
I
it's
was
the importance of the work.
thinking about.
Yeah,
Hmm,
I just want to say I'm a different person because of the group work that I found myself having to try to do. Because I felt we have to let the information in that we're destroying ourselves in our world. We have to let it in. And we're so afraid to. We don't want to let it in that we're creating radioactive contamination with every step we make in arms and energy production. We don't want to know that. There's so much we don't want to know. We don't
it's
want
too
to know.
painful to acknowledge that.
Yeah, and in almost every aspect of our corporate economy, there are things that we don't want to know or admit, and of what we're doing to our world. And so, how do we open our eyes? I don't want to see it. And if I open my eyes, I'll just be crying all the time. So that was the challenge for me at the beginning. I knew that people could be free. The truth makes you free. We're tough. We want to know the truth. We can handle it. And so it started, how do we come together to express what we really feel about what's happening to our world? And this was way back,
Right,
over
right.
40 years ago, about 40 years ago, a little more. And what I found was that people were ready. First people who came, Quakers, poets, co-counselors, some psychologists, not many, artists. And as we did, we found that when tears came, that we could actually say how we feel about what's happening. And then such a feeling of liberation. And we
So,
were falling in love with each other and laughing. And there was even hilarity. We were coming back to life.
one of the wonderful things that I've always taken from your writing, when you said, "Don't ever be ashamed, don't ever be embarrassed about your tears." Your tears for the earth, what's happening to the earth, what's happening to our civilization. That those are nothing to be embarrassed about. That's really a sign of our love, and that just seems and 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 I have to say here, I'm one of the founders of this new Rocky Mountain Eco Dharma Retreat Center, and the Eco Dharma retreats that I offer up there with Johann Robbins. In a way, we have followed this model that you've created. We, when we have these retreats, we're outside all the time, weather permitting, and it's not about sort of going inside in the way that meditation often is, but it's really mindfulness, being aware of the natural world, opening up to it, and then emphasizing the gratitude for it. And then on the basis of that, having been living together and creating the kind of trust that comes from that, then we move into the grief. Then we
Uh,
are ready to share our love and our grief. And because we're there for each other, we're able to support
yeah.
each other. It makes such a difference, such a
So the
difference.
closeness,
Yeah.
the closeness between people, there's the sense of gratitude for each other. And what you've touched already, I see, is the uh, spiral that
Yeah.
we have found in the work, that
So,
we ground in gratitude
so.
so that we're not just complaining. And I must say, this pain for the world is not about complaining. And I am
Mm,
convinced that uh, if we want to do something positive uh, for our world, we've got to be glad to be here.
I
Really.
think that is so important, and frankly I never heard anyone emphasizing it to the degree that you have. There's that quotation from Brother David Steindl-Rast where he says, we're not grateful because we're happy. We're happy because we're grateful. And this
Yeah.
this this was a revelation for me. It's not gratitude isn't something you just feel or you don't feel. It's a
Yeah.
practice where
And
the
then you
practice and
can
the fruit
develop
are
a
integrated.
taste for it.
So
And then
yeah,
you can look, and just at this moment, here I am, sitting way over on the Pacific coast, talking to one of my most beloved teachers in the world, who's over on up in the, and it's so, yeah,
it's
everything is
amazing.
a gift, actually everything, each breath, and you, and and the Buddha Dharma helps us know that to be right in. Everything is in this present moment, as Thich Nhat Hanh says in his foreword here. My, yeah. So then, and then you talk about, so you're grounded in gratitude, grounds you. So you have to, you need to let your heart speak, and let this,
Mm.
uh, because it's for the world. It's not some sick part of you. The pharmaceutical industry is far too ready for us to pathologize our grief for the world and take pills for it and pay therapists up the kazoo because we think that there's something wrong with us. It's our grief for the world, and it is in a way a sacred thing because it tells us how vast we are.
Mm.
We're so much bigger than the outlines of our body and our what is enclosed in our skin. We belong to this world from the get-go. We go back through time. In our mother's womb, we remember the whole evolutionary journey that we've been on. Every breath we draw is a cause for celebration. I really learned that a lot because I'm an asthmatic, and a breath to me is a very precious thing,
Wow.
you
Wow.
know? But what isn't? What isn't precious? And to them, when you're able to go in and even see your pain for the world as telling you something, is telling you that you are vast
Mm.
and that the suffering over in the Congo, as people dig for what you need for your cell phone and get sick and enslaved, you care about that. your caring is huge. And you don't need to be afraid of it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to fear our pain. It has such mysterious word. It's a birth, and when I see how countries and societies around our world have used this work, using their own cultural gifts and their own indigenous people. It's just amazing. But they follow the spiral. And they go to and so here you are in Chile, and you come to the pain for the world, and you've seen that for been 50 years that you've been at war. And the young men have been fighting each other, the paramilitaries and the FARC and in the workshops, they run together through the rainforest. They swim the rivers. They're cleansing themselves. They do all kinds of natural tests and almost athletic rituals to come back to la tierra madre, and find the. So they're using their own gifts. Each culture has them to how do you be with the suffering in a way that opens you up and grows you up.
If I can follow up on that a little bit, it seems to me that in the last few years, sort of, we have some new forms of pain or some new forms of suffering. I'm just thinking of how things have changed in terms of, well, first of all, the Trump presidency and everything associated with that, and then more recently, COVID. And now, of course, the heat waves that are killing people and the forest fires that go along with that. I mean, just in the last few years, these additional or aggravated sources of suffering. Would you want to say something about that?
Each of these, because I was just up in a farm where we're doing the work. The farm is devoted. It's called Earth Abides, and it's devoted to this work. And they were, we got there, and it was triple-digit temperature and hot. But they were working for the earth, working as earth for healing of earth, working as a son and daughter of earth with the earth for the healing of earth in the future. Bonds you deeply. And you find that you're changing. They were telling me how they were listening. This was just this last Sunday. They were telling me. And they were so eager to tell me because this was like a new frontier for what I do in a room. They were out in the heat where I was sitting in comfort in a nice circle in a and they were out there sweating like pigs in this heat, and they were seeing how the water that comes through align with the water, and how they could use the bulldozers to reshape the great open avenue of yellow grass that sweeps down, and you can make curves in little hills that make the water wander and be more useful. And they were saying, and it was so great that they were very serious about, we're listening to the earth. Now we are listening to the earth. And then he described, and I wondered how, because I was getting, I can sometimes get literal. This guy, he's a very skilled bulldozer operator. And so he's out there working. That's how they move the earth. And I thought, well, this is pretty wonderful, that you can listen to the earth driving a bulldozer. But that they were all men and steeped in study of Jem Bendel's deep adaptation, as well as the work that reconnects, and feeling that they were working with the vivid presence and communication with Mother Earth herself.
Wonderful.
So these are big changes, aren't they, David? They're big
And
changes in the heart mind of this species, but that so much of us, and even the policymakers in the governments, don't realize this. They're caught up in the past.
I'm also struck by something Noam Chomsky said in an interview last year. He's someone else for whom I have deep
Me too.
regard, respect. Yeah, he said this is the most dangerous time ever in the history of humanity. And we've been around for a while, so that's a pretty huge thing to say. And in a way, I continue to meditate on what that means and how important that can be for cutting through a lot of the dross, or if you'll excuse me, I sometimes say the bullshit of our lives, in terms of how we can get so caught up in sort of short-term personal success of or lack projects, as I call them, personal things, and how if we really realize the incredibly critical situation we're in, how much that can help cut through all that and help us really focus on the important thing. Because as we both know, the only option, the only real way forward here is to work for healing of ourselves, healing of our societies, and healing of our relationship with the earth.
And it means seeing that we are, I'm trying to find another term for deep shit. We are in a crisis. We're bouncing, we're right on the edge. And to we have to anchor our allegiance to the earth and to each other, your compadres, and to experience that there's something when you're working together. And I know you felt this when you were building the Eco Dharma, to undertake creation of something that is so beautiful and needed, creates a quality of attentive gratitude for each other.
I'm struck by how these supposedly different forms of healing are really different aspects of the same thing. How, you know, my own healing, the healing of our societies and the healing of the earth, they're not separate. It's not as though one can happen at this point without the others really happening.
No.
And again, something else that you've wrote that I'm constantly quoting, Joanna, is, the world has a role to play in our awakening. And I just
Yeah.
think that's so perfectly expressed, that's so essential. It's not about transcending. It's our
This
awakening is about experiencing the world and living in the world in a different, non-egoistic
world is lover.
way. World is lover and world is self.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
in the book, there's a great deal of reference, of course, to Buddhism, um, which has been, really important for you. And I'm wondering if you would want to say anything about how your understanding of Buddhism, especially American Buddhism, Western Buddhism, I mean, where do you see it going? In the light of these incredible challenges that we're facing, what's the role of the Buddhist tradition? Where do you think it's stuck? Uh,
Yes, I
just
have.
kind of throw that out there.
Yeah. When you come to a Work That Reconnects workshop, you know that I'm drawing. One knows. I make no secret of it. So many of the practices are drawn from Buddhist practices, or from the scriptures, or this great ball of merit. A lot of the things that are somewhat even fanciful that we can do together are using and very basic, is the liberating understanding that there's no separate self. That is basic.
Mm.
Of course, that's not limited to Buddhism, because in the West there's been among thinkers, but I don't insist on, but because people from different faith traditions come. But when I look at where the energy is and the work that reconnects, I don't see a lot of facilitators who are Buddhist. I would have expected it.
Why is that?
So that I find, yeah, and I find that the people who come to my workshops, now when I go to a big Buddhist center like Spirit Rock Meditation Center here in the Bay Area, I always have a big crowd in doing the work, and it is the work that reconnects very strongly, and where I enjoy having the Buddhist stories and the Buddhist origins of it. I love that because I don't say that to other people so clearly. They know it, and I heard myself saying a while back that if you were inviting me to a weekend retreat, and one was with Western Buddhists and one was with random activists, I choose the latter. Because I find in Western Buddhists, there's still among many of them an attachment to tranquility, as if that's the point. Well, I don't think it is the point of Buddhism. It's the point of Buddhism is to live freely for the Bahujana, for the happiness of many, that phrase of the Lord Buddha, and go forth for the sake of the many, for the happiness of the many. And he didn't say, just sit under that tree and enjoy your breathing for the weekend. He said, go out there.
Don't
Be
he didn't say go out and transcend the world.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
So that, and also because I like to liberate people's ingenuity and love for life. And once you're out taking a risk, whatever it is, and doing something with others, you fall in love with life. And I love to see that happen, because you're more alive then. Life thrives when you're excited and ready to give and with a song on your lips, or what. I don't mean to romanticize that, but it moves me greatly to see what happens for people when they experience that they can make a difference.
I'm reminded of what happened when I was teaching at a university in Cincinnati some years ago, and we started to form a Buddhist Peace Fellowship group there. And it was interesting to notice what really brought us together and made us a group, made us a Sangha, a community, was the fact that we actually went to Washington as part of an anti-war demonstration. And just doing that together was extraordinarily transformative. It brought us together as a group. It deepened our trust. It felt that we shared intention, as you emphasize in the book. And it was just beautiful to behold. Yeah. But going back to what you were saying about the challenge of sort of immersing ourselves in equanimity, I wonder how much that's a kind of legacy of an understanding or maybe misunderstanding of the Asian traditions, in that when I go back to the earliest Buddhist texts, the Pali Canon, it really seems to me the Buddha, frankly, was more progressive than the institution that developed after he died. It's like when you look at his attitude, when you look at his attitude toward women and caste, I mean, right, a bhikkhuni
Oh,
woman sangha, and likewise you lose caste. But then in order for Buddhism to survive and thrive, the institution came to an accommodation with the state, right? Dukkha, suffering, karma. They never challenged uh, kings and emperors and rulers, and so that potential for social engagement was never fully developed enough. Instead, the way Buddhism developed was focusing on my own individual personal transformation. And as you say, then I think it became connected with equanimity. It's just what's going on with me. I'm not to be engaging in the social struggles or the social institutions, even if they're causing lots of dukkha suffering. It seems to me that's kind of what happened in Asian Buddhism, and we tend to think of that as Buddhism. And then when we
that's interesting.
import Buddhism, then we get stuck doing that kind of thing here, and we think that that's what Buddhism really is.
Yeah, yeah. And that was what was skipped over in for the West when the scholars, first it was in the British Foreign Service, there were a few that we learned the Pali and started translating. When it came to the many scriptures and records on social involvement and social ethics, that sounds just like the gospel that we have at home. That sounds like Christian. They didn't bother. They went for the more exotic, the more meditative, the more internal transformation. So I have taken huge pleasure in this book, folks, is that to tell how in the very early Sangha that first of all it was not a monastic order. It was, he called it Sangha because it was the name for the deliberative assembly of his self-governing republic, one of the 5 or 6 republics in the south flank of Nepal that he came from, that his father belonged to. It was the Sangha. They made the decisions for and so that was what he had in mind. And then I just love this, that the Bengali political science researchers of the last century have traced back the very first use of ballots and voting was in the Buddha Sangha. And that they're taking part in deliberation and self-governance was a requirement if you wanted to belong. Not only that, but if you don't agree, then it's okay. They had what they called a Sangha Bheda, which meant that you can split. You can just say, okay, who thinks like me will go down the road? And they form another one. But there was no Rome or Jerusalem to say this is correct and that is out of order. You just find what you're believing in terms of how you want to, even what you consider Dharma is for all. And in addition to, of course, as is not sufficiently known either, but somewhat more, is that this was the first open. It was open to people of all backgrounds, all colors, runaway slaves,
All
AWOL
castes.
soldiers, the dark skin, the light skin, anybody. And to the point where people of his time were making fun of the Buddha. Oh, he lets anybody in. That he risked becoming laughing stock or rejected because of his absolutely fierce, egalitarianism. Is that widely known today? Not as much
I
as
don't think
it
so.
should be.
But I'm also reminded of Jesus, right? Who also hung out with low life sorts like women and tax collectors and the poor. And again, how much that's been lost. I mean, it's right in the Gospels, and yet we get these great hierarchies of Christendom, Christian organization, papacies and Vaticans and popes and so forth. Yeah, yeah. So, something else that always struck me about the early Buddhist Sangha is that according to the Pali Canon, the Buddha seemed to understand that it wasn't just bhikkhu and bhikkhuni, it wasn't just monastics, that the original understanding of the Sangha was fourfold.
That's
You
right.
had laymen, laywomen,
Yeah,
men, monastics, and somehow again over time that got lost, and the real monastics, the real Buddhists are the monastics now, and the role
yeah.
of the other people is simply to support them and accumulate merit, which seems such a degradation of what I think the Buddha was pointing at.
Yes, the shadow of the patriarchy has been hard on all the religions that are that we are casted. That is why I take time in this book that the sections, I give a whole section, and my editor was also fierce on this,
Hmm.
to how incredibly clarifying and useful it was for me to use systems thinking as a way of understanding paticca samuppada, the Buddha's understanding of causation. And it actually had become my doctoral work, and I had a book on it that came out at about the same time as the original World as Lover, World as Self. And this was omitted
And
in.
Joanna, I'm actually going to interrupt just to say that book, which is not well known, uh, you know, mutual causality and Buddhism and systems theory, that is absolutely wonderful. I'm happy to report it is still in print, and I have to say when I read it, it was an incredible revelation for me. Uh, I've told this story before, but I had the bad habit then of underlining things that I really liked. And that book broke me of the habit because I was underlining everything and it just seemed ridiculous. So I had to stop underlining. But I'm just so delighted that's available. And I'm hoping that it will become better known because I think it's kind of foundational to all of your later work. Excuse me for interrupting you there, but I just want to
Well,
flag that
so
book.
towards that, because I do too, I find it incredibly liberating, and it shines a light on the systems thinking, shines a light on a clarifying light on the Buddhist causality that was just stunning to me. So it was an incredibly exciting period of my life to put these together.
Mm.
And so my editor, Stephanie Casa, and I brought back for a whole section of this book
Yes.
the
So
parts of the co-arising that's so relevant to our time today. So that was, we have we have the co-arising, the wheel of interbeing, and a smashing chapter on karma, the co-arising of doer and deed,
mhm, mhm.
all of that. So I'm very happy to have that in this book.
And I'm happy to see it there. I was reminded again and again of what you'd first talked about in the mutual causality book.
I'm having a kind of uh, rebirth of that or new vision about that just this in this period uh, now that I'm swept by a readiness for us to understand, and it is key for our making it through this time, I believe,
Mm,
is of reciprocity,
mm,
the great reciprocity that is at the center of the universe, that everything happens with give and take. It's not us saving the world. It's the Mother Earth saving herself through us. It's like what we give, she supports. And with what we support, she flowers. That we dance with each other. And this lightens everything. I think that if you pay attention, that is my experience, that if you pay attention to what is going on in your heart, mind, and body as you're offering something to humanity or to our world, you can actually feel the earth or we're coming in and lifting and carrying it. So you feel as if, oh, this is so easy. I'm hardly doing anything. I'm hardly doing this because Big Mama herself, or how even the heart of our world is coming and coming right in. I saw this so clearly with the young Buddhists and rainforest activists in Australia. Remember when I was there with
John Seed, for example.
yeah,
Yes.
and his life changed when he was just a hippie Buddhist farmer. He'd retired from what's this business, IBM, and
Hmm.
and they were farming, and then big forest, a part of the sacred forests of Gondwanaland were being illegally logged, and they said, mates, we got to stop that. And they stood there with protecting the rainforest with just their bodies. And the police were there supporting the illegal loggers. And the chainsaws were screaming, and the bullhorns and the police were running, and they just stood there. And it was at that point that he discovered who he was. He says, oh, it's not me saving the forest. It's the forest herself saving herself through me that she helped cradle into existence. So reciprocity, you realize that you don't have to do it all. You don't even have to see it all. Everything is supported in this dance of reciprocity.
We open up to something deeper than ourselves, deeper than our ego, and we feel something flowing through us that gives us powers and abilities that we didn't know we had.
You can't be stuck in utter pessimism when you have experienced that,
So
because you know that that can happen with anybody. And it's happening with more and more of us. They're amazing things. You know, one of the things that it's not in the book, but it has to do with the reciprocity, is the forgiveness that happens with collective trauma. That's happening so fast with writers like Gabor Mate and Chris Hubel and others, to recognize that how others are suffering from trauma, even our ancestors. And instead of blaming them, we're reaching out compassionately to help them forgive themselves. I see that happening. This is a huge shift. We've been so full of blame.
so I'm wondering if you would like to kind of pull this together. We've been talking for a while now.
Yeah.
Um, this kind of last question I had, which in a way follows perfectly, I think, from what we've been talking about. This is there anything more that you would want to say about how we should live today? And I guess where, just to explain a little bit where that comes from, it does seem to me that as things continue to unravel faster than faster, it really seems. It's like the 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 great advantage of that is that the dreams that we had before about who we were and what we were going to make of our life, uh, those don't make sense anymore. and it enables us to ask, what is really important. And I'm just wondering if you'd want to, if there's anything more there you would like to reflect on.
I don't want to say what people should do. And I think that because once we allow ourselves to actually experientially feel of what is happening, once we stop trying to protect ourselves from tears or anguish, once we let it in, there can be a sense of, but I'm here. I want to be alive now. I'm feeling alive. My heart is stirred. I can feel that I have been given the opportunity to be alive at the most dangerous time we can imagine. I don't think there's been a time like this. I've never heard of a time where humanity could, in sober analysis, looking at all the facts, saw that it was so possible or even likely that complex life forms, complex enough for consciousness, could be no longer able to live. We're losing the biodiversity required for that. And if you think, well, if this is certainly not my fault or your fault, and whose fault it is isn't interesting.
It's a question of responsibility. How do we respond?
Well, and that is sort of burdened with moral weight. But how do you want to just be? And you could sort of check out and stay drunk or coast off on opioids or something like that. But you could allow yourself to feel your love for this incredible place and its stories. And it's the one planet we know. And there's a tenderness of belonging that stirs in us. And if you're at all like me and some of my friends, it feels right to be here now. You want to be here now. I feel so grateful to be here now. Not because I can make everything better. I don't know how, but I want to be here. I want to be with this incredible, beloved planet. I belong. I belong here. I'm part of her. I'm like a cell in her body. I love her. I love life. I love everything done, our poetry, our dances, our paintings, and I'm going to be here just as long as I can with all my gratitude and all my love and all my attention. I want to give the gift of my attention and free it from fear of what I have to insist it has to happen. I don't know. Maybe something fantastic's going to happen. But for it to happen, we got to show up.
Thank you, Joanna. I don't see how I could ask any more after that. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this, and for being here with us, for being our teacher, for being part of our lives, for showing us the way forward. Thank you so much.
It's so good to be with you, David.